The National News Desk, locally covered, nationally connected.
The president, of course, is aware of the passing of the Pope and did put out a statement this morning, and we're praying for the millions of Christians around the world who love the Pope and admired him.
A day of loss and reflection as the world reacts and remembers Pope Francis. Why this revolutionary pontiff is still breaking the mold even after his passing. Constitutional rights protected. The Supreme Court once again affirms an individual right. What this means for you and how they did it without hearing new arguments. And then the deportation debate continues. Why 4 more lawmakers are in El Salvador today as the legal battles play out. This is the National News Desk, America's News Now. I'm Dee Dee Gatton, and we begin tonight with a live look over the Vatican and St. Peter's Square as the world mourns and reacts to the passing of Pope Francis this morning at the age of 88. We have learned tonight the Pope suffered a stroke overnight, leading to a short coma and a reversible heart failure just hours after celebrating his final Easter. And here are some of those images from what turned out to be Pope Francis's final address. He had just returned to public appearances after spending more than a month in the hospital for pneumonia. He had battled other health issues over his 12-year papacy. Pope Francis was named the head of the Catholic Church in 2013 when Pope Benedict XVI stepped down. President Donald Trump spoke briefly about the Pope's passing this morning at the White House as he expressed his admiration.
I just signed an executive order putting the flags of our country, all of them, all federal flags and state flags, at half-mast in honor of Pope Francis. So he was a good man, worked hard, he loved the world, and it's an honor to do that.
And now for a look at the life and legacy of Pope Francis, reporter Karen Kafa shows us the impact he made on the Catholic Church.
From the beginning, Pope Francis had the common touch.
Buonasera.
A simple good evening from the newly elected Cardinal Jorge Mario Bergoglio from Argentina, the first pope ever from the Americas. Equally at home with the poor and the powerful. On the lawn of the White House, he made a plea for immigrants.
As the son of an immigrant family, I'm happy to be a guest in this country, which was largely built by such families.
The Pope focused much of his attention to those on the peripheries, as he called it, the outsiders excluded from society.
The
hungry, the thirsty, the stranger, the naked, the sick, those in prison.
He was not so popular at times inside the Vatican. Backlash from conservatives upset about his liberal approach to church teaching, promised reforms of financial transparency never fully materializing, and the scandal of sex abuse continuing to be the Catholic Church's biggest struggle.
He met with victims. He expressed heartfelt sorrow. He expressed resolve to get this right.
When the coronavirus pandemic hit in 2020, this image of the Pope blessing the world from an empty St. Peter's Square became a symbol for that desolate time. Francis urged nations to share their vaccines with poorer countries and vaccinated hundreds of homeless and underprivileged at the Vatican. From the beginning of the war in Ukraine in 2022, Francis was an outspoken advocate for peace. Francis avoided outright condemnation of Vladimir Putin, but publicly appealed to the Russian president, begging him to stop for the love of his people, the Pope said. He made similar appeals for peace during the conflict in the Middle East, saying that the Israel-Hamas war had descended into terrorism. He insisted that war is always a defeat and said self-defense that is not proportional is immoral. Francis's most important message was one of fraternity, that we are all brothers and sisters despite our differences. I'm Karen Kafa reporting.
And his impact felt and reactions pouring in from across the world. The Trump administration's plans to strike deals with trading partners may have just gotten more complicated. China now warning it will retaliate against countries making trade agreements with the U.S. that hurt Chinese interests. The National News Desk, Anja El-Nashar reports from Washington.
In New Delhi Monday, Vice President J.D. Vance meeting with Prime Minister Narendra Modi. With the United States being India's top trading partner, President Trump's sweeping tariffs top of mind for the two leaders. On a temporary pause is a 27% import tax on goods from India.
We are working in order that by fall this year, we should at least have the first phase of the agreement signed.
Like India, Kazakhstan under Trump's threat of 27% tariffs and will send a delegation to Washington soon for trade talks.
We're going to ultimately have a deal with anyone. If we don't, we're going to make it anyway.
This week, top Trump cabinet officials are set to meet with delegations from South Korea, which is trying to avoid 25% tariffs, and Thailand, up against 36% tariffs from the president, who posted this on social media over the weekend. The golden rule of negotiating and success: he who has the gold makes the rules. Thank you. It's not necessarily these trading partners coming to the table for talks the president has to worry about. It's the one that isn't: China. In a statement Monday morning, China's Ministry of Commerce says China firmly opposes any party reaching a deal at the expense of China's interests. If this happens, China will never accept it and will resolutely take countermeasures in a reciprocal manner. The U.S. and China are in a standoff with triple-digit tariffs imposed on each other's products, causing economic pain here at home. Chicago Fed President Austin Goolsbee says it's even hurting an industry meant to benefit from tariffs.
You've seen a series of domestic steel producers actually start some layoffs because the demand is not there, because the tariffs are hurting their customers more than they're helping their cost side.
Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell warns that the president's tariffs are likely to hurt the job market and increase inflation. But President Trump continues to publicly pressure Powell and the rest of the Fed to cut interest rates. So the attempt to exert political influence on the independent central bank is believed, Dee, to have contributed to those hefty stock market losses that we saw at the closing bell earlier today.
That relationship has always been one that we're watching, Atra. This afternoon, though, President Trump meeting privately with representatives of some of the nation's biggest retailers. What more do we know about that meeting?
We know that Walmart confirms its CEO participated in this meeting with the president, and this was first reported by Bloomberg, that the meeting also including top reps from Target, Home Depot, Lowe's, so very, very important customers to everyday Americans, real staples of the American economy. And this meeting, of course, surrounding how the president's tariffs are impacting retail. Now, the president just today acknowledged, once again, the quote-unquote, as he calls it, transition that comes with his aggressive trade policy, but he's not publicly reckoned yet with the warning many companies, some in the room with him today, have issued about the havoc his tariffs will cause on supply chains. So the president says he can be flexible with any policy change, but especially the longer he goes with these tariffs in place, if he were to make any policy changes, he does risk looking as if he's caving to political pressure.
Interesting. Live from Washington, D.C., Atra El-Nashar, thank you. The Secret Service reviewing security camera footage in an attempt to identify a masked man who stole Homeland Secretary Kristi Noem's purse. This happened last night. The secretary was actually having dinner at a restaurant in downtown D.C. with her family. A DHS spokesperson confirming the purse contained her driver's license, medication, apartment keys, passport, DHS access badge, blank checks, and about $3,000 in cash, which the secretary meant to use on the dinner and Easter gifts. And this time, it is not clear if this was a crime of opportunity or if the secretary was targeted. This was the scene on the tarmac at Orlando International Airport this morning. Look at those flames. 282 passengers had to be evacuated from that Delta plane when an engine caught on fire. The plane was readying for takeoff to Atlanta when the burst of flames came out of the engine tailpipe. Thankfully, no one was injured in the evacuation. All passengers were reassigned to get to their final destinations. Florida State University students are back in class today, 4 days after a deadly campus shooting. The university's president sharing some words of encouragement.
Our thoughts remain with the families and friends who lost loved ones and with those who were injured and are now recovering. This tragedy has shaken us all. Please know that we are all here for you.
Faculty and students have the option to have class in person or remotely, depending on the subject. The university has also waived all mandatory attendance policies, so students will not be affected if they don't go to class. Last Thursday, 2 people were killed and 6 others were injured after a student opened fire on campus, authorities say. Relatives of the victims of the 2019 El Paso massacre are now giving impact statements in a Texas courtroom. Earlier today, Patrick Crusius changed his plea to guilty of capital murder after local prosecutors decided not to seek the death penalty. Crusius was automatically sentenced to life in prison without parole. He's already been sentenced to 90 consecutive life sentences in federal court. Young adults in Minnesota will still be allowed to have gun carry permits. The Supreme Court just rejected an appeal from Minnesota seeking to bring back a statewide ban. The High Court also kept in place a gun ban at the University of Michigan, dismissing an appeal from a man who said he has a right to have a gun on campus. The justices are still considering an Obamacare case that centers around the requirement for insurance companies to cover certain tests and treatments for free. The plaintiffs believe the federal task force that determines which services should be covered is unconstitutional. The Trump administration believes the HHS Secretary has enough oversight of the task force. A ruling will likely come out in June or July. Nadine Menendez, the wife of former U.S. Senator Bob Menendez, now convicted by a jury of her peers. After a 3-week trial, Nadine has been found guilty of accepting bribes of cash, gold bars, and a luxury car from 3 New Jersey businessmen. Her husband was found guilty last year and is set to begin an 11-year sentence in June. His conviction is under appeal. Coming up next year on the National News Desk, the cities at highest risk tonight for severe thunderstorms, damaging winds, and large hail. Also, the new controversy surrounding the Defense Secretary's signal messages that's prompting calls for his resignation. Then, how police officers in Oklahoma used a drone to rescue a man who got hit by a train. We're back in 90 seconds. Right now, 18 million Americans are at risk for severe thunderstorms tonight in parts of the upper Ohio Valley, the lower Great Lakes, as well as part of the southeast right here. The main risk we're talking about, damaging winds as well as severe hail. The risk expands to 28 million people tomorrow with those strong thunderstorms possible in parts of the southern plains. Then Texas and Oklahoma residents, they're cleaning up the damage from severe weekend weather that left at least 3 people dead. You can see here some of that destruction that we're working to get up for you in Spalding, Oklahoma. The storm system brought heavy rain, winds, large hail and tornadoes to portions of the South and Midwest. At least 17 tornadoes reported Saturday, including 5 confirmed in South Central Oklahoma. Our coverage continues now of the death of Pope Francis. The Holy Father died at the age of 88 hours after marking his final Easter. Cardinal Dolan shared some of his thoughts this morning from St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York City.
This gives me the chance to express publicly the sadness that we all feel at the passing of our beloved Holy Father, Pope Francis, and yet also to try to give some expression to the hope that was crystallized yesterday morning, Easter morning, the hope of the resurrection, and to express gratitude to all of you and to this community that already is beginning to express sympathy and condolences to the Catholic family.
Pope Francis will be the first pope in more than a century to not be buried at the Vatican. Most are buried in the grottos beneath St. Peter's Basilica in the Vatican City. But Pope Francis chose his final resting place in December of 2023, the Basilica of Santa Maria Maggiore. The late Pope used to visit the Basilica on Sunday mornings to honor the Virgin Mary. He called it his great devotion. Developing now, 4 Democratic lawmakers on the ground in El Salvador right now to fight the release of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who the Trump Justice Department says was deported after an administrative error. Their visit follows that of Maryland Senator Chris Van Hollen, who met with Abrego Garcia, who remains detained despite an order from the U.S. Supreme Court that the Trump administration must facilitate his return. All of this as the White House had planned to use an old wartime act to deport another group of migrants, an action that was halted, as the National News Desk Christine Frizau reports.
The Bluebonnet Detention Center in Anson, Texas, just the latest backdrop in the debate over immigration. NBC News obtaining this video of an Immigration and Customs Enforcement bus filled with Venezuelan migrants the Trump administration says were gang members, reportedly using the Alien Enemies Act to deport them. The bus headed to the airport, then abruptly turned around.
They were told, well, you were lucky you were sent back because you were going to El Salvador, not Venezuela.
That same night, the Supreme Court directed the government not to remove any detainees under the Alien Enemies Act until further notice, following an emergency appeal from the American Civil Liberties Union. While unsigned, it made clear Justice Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito did not agree. Justice Alito writing, literally in the middle of the night, the court issued unprecedented and legally questionable relief without giving the lower courts a chance to rule, without hearing from the opposing party, within 8 hours of receiving the application, with dubious factual support for its order, and without providing any explanation for its order. ICE officials, meanwhile, releasing names and those it's arrested and crimes associated with them, like this Salvadoran national convicted of sex offenses with a minor, or this Mexican national, it says, was convicted of attempted murder, as the Trump administration contests the latest Supreme Court order.
We had millions and millions of people come in who are criminals, who are murderers, who are everything you can imagine, drug lords, drug dealers. They came in from prisons and from mental institutions, and I was elected to move them out.
The law guaranteeing due process remains central to all of this. Even an initial ruling from the Supreme Court allowing the Trump administration to use the Alien Enemies Act said that anyone the government wants to deport needs to be given the opportunity to first challenge that decision. In Washington, I'm Christine Frizau.
Democrats are calling on Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth to resign or be fired as new reports of Hegseth using the messaging app Signal to discuss details about an imminent attack on Houthis in Yemen with non-DoD staff. This time, he has said to have sent messages to his wife, among others. The White House says no classified information was shared. Today at the White House, Secretary Hegseth pushed back on those allegations as President Trump maintained his support.
Not going to work with me because we're changing the Defense Department, putting the Pentagon back in the hands of warfighters, and anonymous smears from disgruntled former employees on old news doesn't matter.
He's doing a great job. It's just fake news. They just bring up stories. I guess it sounds like disgruntled employees. You know, he was put there to get rid of a lot of bad people, and that's what he's doing. So you don't always have friends when you do that.
A common condition which impacts everything from hair growth to infertility may have helped with what is on the menu. Medical reporter Liz Bonus reports.
Hey there, everybody. PCOS, or polycystic ovary syndrome, is caused by hormones that are out of balance in the body. But as one mom found out, diet can make a difference. She started with subtle changes, more fresh foods, more plant-based meals.
I did want to see exactly, what kind of things I could do to best improve my health overall.
And then Hida Weber reached out to Jamie Sanzier here at Ohio's Christ Hospital Aim for Wellbeing. Her main goal?
I also wanted to start a family and start trying to get pregnant.
Jamie is a functional medicine dietitian who specializes in PCOS.
I worked with her a lot on food relationships.
For Hida, that meant fewer processed foods and more whole foods overall.
She found ways to make small changes and incorporate them into like a regular diet.
Hida added more lean proteins.
Protein is really important for helping stabilize blood sugar.
More plant foods, which included beans, nuts, and seeds loaded with fiber.
Fiber is also something that really goes overlooked.
She also got more good fats, whole grains, plenty of leafy greens, and fresh fruits. This not only got Hida feeling better, but remember her ultimate goal?
That did happen, and now I have a beautiful baby girl.
Little Ella, now 9 months old. Both mom and baby are healthy and doing well. Mom says she's pretty much incorporated many of these diet changes for life. With your health news, I'm Liz Bonus reporting.
Coming up next, the shocking discovery an Ohio man made while searching for mushrooms in the woods. We'll explain right after this. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering issues that matter to you. We're taking the pulse of America, and we start in Oklahoma, where police used a drone to rescue a man with life-threatening injuries.
This is how an Oklahoma City police drone found a man that had been hit by a train on the south side of the city a few weeks ago. Chief Lucas Qualls with OKC Fire says because of the circumstances, using the drone allowed crews to respond quicker.
We were able to get a drone up in the air, actually physically locate the patient some distance down the tracks. It was in a very inaccessible spot as well, so it would have taken a considerable amount of time to locate this person by normal means.
Qualls tells me the man had life-threatening injuries but was able to survive. Sergeant Dax Laporte with Oklahoma City Police says by getting the drone in the air, valuable information was able to be relayed to responding officers and firemen.
This is Zachary. He didn't want his face shown on camera. He says he's in disbelief with what he found in a wooded area off Barger Road in Washington Township.
I was looking for mushrooms and I just happened to stumble across the skull and some other bones in a boot.
Claremont County Sheriff's deputies got to the area about 10 minutes after Zachary called. They confirmed he found human remains. Other crews showed up to help with the investigation, including the EquiSearch Midwest team. They did a comprehensive search of the area on Sunday. David Rader is the director of the team. He says he can't go into certain details about this investigation. However, he says nearly 24 people helped cover ground and discovered additional remains.
You may get a pop-up message on your computer, a call directly saying that your bank accounts have been compromised or some other important account. They say they can fix this for you, but first you have to go to your bank, withdraw a large amount of money, and move it to someplace safe. They then direct you to go to the nearest crypto ATM machine and put the money in there while they fix your accounts. But really what you've just done is bought crypto for the scammer, which now hands them your money and is untraceable.
Coming up, President Trump's comments about religion in America today at the annual White House Easter egg roll. We'll be right back. Live look over Green Bay, Wisconsin as we come back on the air on Thursday night. The first round of the NFL draft starts 7 p.m. Central Time. We'll have more on the lead up to the draft this week as we get closer to draft night.
We're honoring Jesus Christ, and we're going to honor Jesus Christ very powerfully throughout our lives, all throughout our lives, not just now, all throughout our lives. We're bringing religion back in America. We're bringing a lot of things back, but religion is coming back to America.
More than 40,000 attendees here at the annual Easter egg roll at the White House today as President Trump oversaw many of the races himself. At the event, Trump pledges that religion, as you heard, is coming back to America in a speech hours after the death of Pope Francis. In Boston, history made today the Boston Marathon. On the women's side, Sharon Lekedi of Kenya set a new course record of 2 hours, 17 minutes and 20 seconds, breaking the old record by more than 2 minutes. On the men's side, winner John Courier was met by his brother Wesley at the finish line as the two become the first relatives of any kind to both win at the Boston Marathon. Wesley won the Boston Marathon back in 2012. And that's going to do it for us for this edition of the National News Desk. Join us again at 10 tonight for more reaction to the passing of Pope Francis, as well as what comes next as Harvard is now suing the administration over funding cuts. I'm Dita Gatton. See you tonight.